The United States has the highest miscarriage rate in the developed world, and families are sicker than ever. As Christians, we should lead the charge in restoring health, following God's regenerative blueprint. So do you cherish your bride as a fruitful vine? If so, as the glory of man, our wives deserve the purest care and nourishment. And do you view your children as a blessing? Well, fatherhood calls for proactive stewardship of health, relying on God's Farmacy to protect and nurture our arrows from preconception to adulthood. At Be Regenerated, we equip men to be fruitful and multiply God's ways through biblical nutrition and fertility coaching. So remember, renewal begins in your home. Join the regeneration.
Happy New Year, Regenerated family. 2025, the year of our Lord. We are very grateful that you are here with us. We're so grateful for the community that has been growing as a result of your consistent encouragement and support for Be Regenerated. This is the first of a two-part podcast series on the fertility crisis, particularly in America. This episode is going to be about restoring fertility and what the concept of fertility means at large. In our next episode, we're going to talk about increasing fertility, where with my good friend Caleb Lang, we're going to talk about specific things that you need to do. And this is going to include things that you need to eliminate from your home, as well as things that you need to bring into your home. In a meeting that we had looking at our goals for 2025, he's a clinical nutritionist by training, and he's also an engineer and a farmer, and he's got 8 children as a good friend of mine. And he said something that really struck me. He said, men are called to take ownership of the nutritional status of their family and of their community. Men are called to take ownership of the nutritional status of their family and of their community. So what does that mean? We want to get down to the basics of making Christendom healthy again. Now, this is stuff, if you've been following the podcast circuit, whether you're listening to guys like Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson, or you're just following general trends on X, you know that a lot of what I'm going to talk about is the buzz right now. And we want to break down on the most basic levels what it looks like to make America healthy again and what it looks like to make Christendom healthy again. Those of us who bear the name of Christ and represent him as his ambassadors, we should be leading this. And that's really our passion. That's been my passion for well over 15 years. In October, I had the privilege to represent Be Regenerated and sponsor the Trad Dad event. They've done some incredible conferences in the past. You can find them on YouTube. They have one on the Bible and food freedom that I'll highly recommend, and I'll put that in the link below. I want to say thank you and give credit to C.R. Wiley and the other collaborators that he had, as well as the administrator, Mr. Townley, who put on this event, where they were talking about the things that are the most pressing issues of our day. And they recognize, like Elon Musk does, as well as any elite thinker and global leader worth their salt, all recognize that infertility leads to population collapse and has in fact already led us to population collapse. This is something that even if you have listened to Joe Rogan and some of the men that he's interviewed talking about geopolitics, the collapse of the population in Western countries and in Russia, and especially in China, where they instituted the one-child policy and eliminated most of their girls. This has led us to the modern crisis, the defining crisis of our time, where we don't have enough of a birth rate to sustain the population at large, to sustain the aging population who has sucked a lot of resources and has put us in massive debt and also consume a lot of resources and need to be cared for. We have not had enough children to replace that and to sustain a growing, vibrant future. This is a basic problem throughout all human history and has become one of the most poignant issues in modern times, and why the church should be focusing on the solutions to these things. I was blown away by those lectures. And at that event, I had the opportunity to give a short presentation on what Be Regenerated is doing to help men and their families restore fertility and what is needed to bring that about. And that led to a great many of individual coaching sessions that I've been able to have since then, a lot of conversations and a lot more that need to be had with people that we haven't been able to touch base yet. So if you're one of those, feel free to reach out to me and let's finally make that happen. But what I was really blown away by at that conference is how many people came up to me and told me that they have suffered from multiple miscarriages. Now, but first, let me give you some shocking statistics. Infertility is a multifaceted issue plaguing the modern world, but the United States is uniquely plagued with a fertility crisis. We had the lowest birth rate in a century in the year 2023. The lowest birth rate in a century. The US also has the highest miscarriage rate in the world per capita, and more than double that of other developed nations. Roughly 30% of pregnancies in the United States end in miscarriage. At least 29% of preborn children were also intentionally destroyed by their parents in 2023. So that means in 2023, we had the lowest birth rate, and at the same time, we had one of the highest rates of abortion in history, which is the leading cause of death worldwide. The leading cause of death is abortion. So out of pregnancies, nearly 30% of them are intentionally killed, these babies. 30% of the pregnancies of parents who are trying to have children, many of them trying to conceive, but 30% of them that do conceive and get pregnant end in miscarriage. So that's about 2/3 of our potential fertility rate being destroyed before these children can enter the world. The New England Journal of Medicine did peer-reviewed studies and military records, detailed military records of service members' families show a dramatic increase in spontaneous abortions since the advent of the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. If you want a really good breakdown of this, I would start with one of Tucker Carlson's recent interviews that he did on vaccines in general. Highly recommend it. The average umbilical cord in 2014 had over 4,000 foreign contaminants, chemicals, toxicants, things that are harmful to the baby or the fetus. Fetus is just the Latin word for baby. I'll cover in our next episode on fertility a little bit more of the details of what is currently happening, because that study was done over 10 years ago. There are more than 4,000 foreign contaminants because we now are able to test for more that are found in the umbilical cords of mothers who deliver children. And those are the babies that survive this toxic environment just in the womb. So we can't even escape these toxicants and the effects of our poisonous world and the poisonous food that we eat inside the womb. Also, chronic illnesses impact at least 1/3 of all children, twice as much as all infectious diseases combined. Cancer is the leading cause of death by chronic disease among children. Think about that. The leading cause of death by chronic disease, which kills way more children than infectious diseases, all these things that we're supposed to give our children 76 vaccines within the first 2 years for. Cancer is the leading cause of death among children. Now, you don't see billboards for that everywhere, but this is the reality of so many families. And infectious diseases are still increasing in spite of all-time high vaccination rates. If this solution, this theory, was supposed to cure us of infectious diseases, it has failed, overtly failed. And primarily among vaccinated children, we find a rise in infectious diseases, new types of infectious diseases and variations of different viruses, bacterial infections. A simple example of this would be the rise of medically resistant infectious bacteria that are flesh-eating and beyond, that are often contracted in the hospital almost all the time, or contracted in hospital sterilized environments. And these things are medically resistant, meaning that they are impervious to antibiotics. They've been created by a proliferation of antibiotics, and these things are increasing. The last statistic I'll give is that developmental disorders affect nearly 1 in 5 children. It was 1 in 6 children in the 2010s, and now it's 1 in 5 children. So in less than 15 years, we've seen a dramatic increase in developmental disorders among children. And that would be in conjunction with also increased vaccinations and an increase of a lot of toxic things in our environment. We could look at screen time, all kinds of different stuff, but we're talking about things that affect children from a very early age before they are fully developed in many cases. And certainly we need to be looking at the decreasing nutritional value of our food and the worsening of the nutritional choices that are being made by the average family. So those are some alarming statistics that I want you to think about when we start to tackle this issue of fertility, because there are different things at play, but the question is without doubt that we are in serious trouble, that the birth rate will continue to decrease unless we make drastic changes in our families concerning the greatest dangers to our health. So let's dive into the concept of fertility at large and why it's so important for you to be owning the nutritional status of your home as men, as husbands, as fathers, and being a voice for the nutritional status of your community. Because nutrition doesn't only empower and help grow and nourish a child and provide for life to even start, to be conceived in the womb. Nutrition also plays a role in defending our bodies and defending our children against the toxic antagonists that we cannot completely avoid in the modern world, no matter how much we filter our water and how much we choose to eat pesticide-free foods. These are the things that the average person is not thinking about. These are the things that I think about and that I spend a lot of money and time in making sure my family avoids as many as possible. But we can't do this completely. And so we have to look at the tools that are available to us that are healthy, that God has designed in order for us to have an increasing fertility rate rather than a decreasing one. And this is why I've titled it Food and Fertility. Food and Fertility. We're focused on biblical nutrition and, of course, other aspects of your health. But in this season, we want to talk about the importance of food and how it is the very tool that God has given us to create life and to sustain life.
If you listen to and are careful to keep these ordinances, the Lord your God will keep with you his covenant and steadfast love, as he swore to your ancestors. He will love you, bless you, and multiply you. He will bless your offspring and the produce of your land, your grain, new wine, and fresh oil, the young of your herds and the newborn of your flocks, in the land he swore to your ancestors that he would give you. You will be blessed above all peoples. There will be no infertile male or female among you or your livestock. The Lord will remove all sickness from you. He will not put on you all the terrible diseases of Egypt that you know about, but he will inflict them on all who hate you. You must destroy all the peoples the Lord your God is delivering over to you, and not look on them with pity. Do not worship their gods, for that will be a snare to you. Do not bring any detestable thing into your house, or you will be set apart for destruction like it. You are to abhor and detest it utterly, because it is set apart for destruction.
Powerful passage there that Trevor just read for us. If you have listened to our previous episode on biblical nutrition, what is biblical nutrition, you will recognize some parallels there. When God's taking the people into the promised land, which is shortly after, he gives this Deuteronomic blessing, this promise of blessing, and also the curses. He is telling them to live differently, not only from the Egyptians that they came out of, but then also from the Canaanites that they're going into. There's all kinds of laws that God is giving them because of the detestable practices like boiling a kid in its mother's milk that the Canaanites have. And we could do a whole podcast episode on how detestable and disgusting some of these ancient cultures were. And there's still many cultures like this around the world today. And in many ways, we have begun embracing some of these detestable pagan practices in the modern world. So just nothing is new under the sun. But what's amazing here is that God is promising that if his people keep his ordinances, which let's remember that so many of the Levitical ordinances around food and cleanliness had to do with protection and thriving and health, eating good food, how to eat it, how to get the nutritional value out of it. What does God want us to eat and what does he want us to avoid? How to identify diseases that are infectious or that are benign, how to handle people in those situations. That was all given to Israel. And God is saying, if you follow these ordinances, and of course, everything else that would make a people a faithful people, it's not just those things, then he will bless and multiply us. So the promise of this passage is fertility. This is a passage about fertility, that God would love and bless them and multiply them, which is the original mandate. So we've talked about this from the very beginning. God puts man on the earth, gives them a mandate to care for it and then to multiply. And then he gives them food, their provision, in order to do that in an environment that doesn't have disease and decay. With the fall enters disease and decay, and God still provides provision, and then he gives ordinances on how to use it correctly. And think about that term ordinance. There's order built into that. So he gives man the correct order on how to do these things to thrive in spite of the decay and the death that has entered the world. He promises fertility, blessing and multiplication. So God is now saying, I've renewed you, I've made you a new people, I've regenerated you, and I've taken you from Egypt, from slavery, and I've birthed you into a new people, and I'm sending you into a new land. And now I'm going to bless you in order to carry out this dominion mandate that was my original mandate. He will bless the fruit of the womb and the produce of the land. Notice the parallel between the fruit of the human and the fruit of the land, the fertility of the people and the fertility of the land. They go hand in hand. You don't have fertility in your people if you don't have fertility in your land, which is why I've talked about multiple times in previous episodes, the importance of regenerative agriculture, nutritional density within our food, and making sure that we start getting back to God's ordinances when it comes to things like farming, because we have a fertility crisis in our bodies because there's a fertility crisis in the food itself and in the soil. It's dead, it's decayed. It has been overused and poisoned. God promises to bless them, and the fruit of the land would be the things that we've been talking about on the podcast: grain, new wine, oil. Those are three things we've already talked about. We've talked about healthy fats, we've talked about antioxidants, we've talked about the grain provision. So those very three groups, there they are mentioned again, biblical nutrition. He also talks about the young of the herds and the lambs of the flocks, herds and flocks, the meat provision that we're going to talk about on our next episode. So God is promising this abundance of their good food that gives them fertility if they obey him, and then therefore fertility in their bodies. They will be blessed above all peoples. Among them there will be no barren man or woman or livestock. If we were to follow the pattern that's laid down of living according to God's ordinances, eating healthy foods, and of course we would take the New Testament understanding of these things and apply it. If we were to be doing that, and indeed if we were to avoid a lot of the things that God in his wisdom said to avoid, like scavenger animals, we would be much more healthy. We wouldn't see these diseases. Now, I've also mentioned previously how the vast majority of diseases that are killing us are chronic diseases. They're lifestyle related. They're not infectious diseases. So that was the primary thing that took people out in history past. But now it's well over 80% of the population are dying from preventable diseases, heart disease, things like that are pretty much all nutritional deficiencies and they're lifestyle related, which would then beg the question, are we violating God's ordinances when it comes to our health and our lifestyle, and therefore suffering the diseases of the pagans and the nations around us? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. Why do Christians essentially suffer at the same rate as the culture that they live in? We'll just take America, for example, when it comes to chronic diseases. Why are we spending so much of our time praying about these things and constantly having to alter our plans and our lives and our influence in our community because we have these same health crises that are, again, chronically related? They're not infectious things. They're things that can be controlled. And I understand that a lot of people are new to the holistic health arena and nutrition. And I'm not saying that every single chronic disease is just a matter of you making a bad choice. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that these are diseases that are brought on by violating God's natural order and by not eating the things that he says, not moving our bodies the way that they're supposed to be moving. So we have to look at those and we have to ask ourselves, if we're suffering the same diseases as everyone around us, then are we carefully keeping the ordinance of the Lord? And we're not. And therefore we don't see the blessing and the multiplication. And again, this is not just our food consumption. This is how we take care of the land and the animals. The animals are unhealthy. The land is unhealthy. Therefore its produce is unhealthy. And then that's reflected in our bodies, in our nutritional deficiencies and our diseases. So that is the overarching message that we can take away from this passage. But we can also look at this as a great promise for us. If we are to restore fertility, then we need to restore food to the way that God wanted it. And then we need to orient our lifestyles holistically. So fitness, we would look at other metrics, it's the same types of things that we track, that we help people track with Be Regenerated: hydration, relationships with your spouse, rest, adequate rest. That's certainly a main feature that we're a hustle, we're a burnout culture. We don't get good quality rest. We don't know how to stop. We don't rest in the Lord. We don't start our week with a day of rest, which is the new covenant pattern. And because of that, we see that we are suffering the same diseases. Verse 26, the last one that you read there, you must not bring any detestable thing into your house, or you, like it, will be set apart for destruction. You are to utterly destroy and detest and abhor it, because it is set apart for destruction. So what were the things that God was setting apart for destruction for Israel when they were going into this beautiful promised land? Well, they were going to destroy the things and eliminate the things from their lives that were causing death and decay and harm to other humans. The things that the Lord detested, like their treatment of animals, their treatment of the land, their treatment of their body, their sexual perversions, and their perversions with the food as well. All of those things, God was going to have Israel completely detest and destroy, and not even be a remnant of it. There would be no image left of it. It would be burned down. It would be completely erased so that it wouldn't contaminate and compel the Israelites to then follow in their same footsteps, which we know Israel did most of this, but they didn't completely do it. And within only a few generations, they became just like the peoples that they had displaced, and the Lord brings on all these curses to them. So I will leave it to you to apply this to where we're at as a church and as a people and as a nation. And I will encourage you by pointing to the fact that there is a massive movement underway, the Make America Healthy Again movement. It has been underway for some time. I've been part of it for well over a decade, but there's a massive outcry right now and a realization that we have to get back to correct agriculture, that we have to get back to moving our bodies and exercising and doing all these basic things, which are not incentivized or subsidized by the government, but are our responsibility. I'm very fortunate, my wife and I, but it's not a matter of chance. I've talked about this in the podcast already, that we went from a place where I had chronic fatigue. My wife didn't have a regular monthly cycle. We both had major hormonal issues, and the prospects would have seemed very small that we would conceive and have children. And yet I applied the nutritional tools that I've been learning for years. My wife and I have been married for 9 years to our family right at the beginning, because I knew exactly what we needed to do. And I had met my wife at a nutrition workshop actually, and got her on a program right when we started dating. And that really restored her monthly cycle and gave her energy in her first year as a full-time employee in accounting. And she started to put on muscle and just have a lot more energy, was outperforming her coworkers. And those were similar results to what I had when I put my chronic fatigue in remission using the same nutritional tools. And my wife already was eating fairly healthy, but she wasn't getting nutrient-dense foods, and she wasn't getting enough protein, and she wasn't getting the core nutrients that just aren't really in the food supply anymore. And seeing that turnaround in her, and then doing a heavy metal detox and a full reset of the gut shortly before we got married, put us in a position to where we got pregnant on our honeymoon. So that's my personal story. And we now have 4 boys, and each pregnancy has been easier on her body. She's had more energy with each pregnancy, and the deliveries have been smoother with each successive child. In fact, our 4th came so fast that I caught him. The midwife didn't make it here in time. And we've learned how to better nourish our children from the very beginning, improved each time as well. And our kids they exceed the normal development rate as far as their speech, their ability to communicate, and a lot of other developmental features. This is continuously pointed out to us by people. And they're very rarely sick. You can ask many of our friends, how often are the Weedles not able to go to an event, or how often do they not show up because they're sick? It's basically been like once every 2 years for a day. And those things are very rare because our goals with our family are no symptoms, no meds. And when we do have symptoms, to look at those as the body's sign language and empower the body to fight those things naturally. We don't use over-the-counter medications. We basically avoid all conventional interventions. Now, if there was an emergency, a broken leg or a serious accident, then that's different. But in general, we don't rely on pharmaceuticals. We avoid junk food. We eat out very rarely, and we prioritize nutrition. And if we do treatments, then they are things that would be considered routine care, like chiropractic or holistic dentistry, something like that. That's the way that we live our lives. And as a result, what we read about in Deuteronomy is the general experience that we have in our family. And that's not because we're some extra special people that we are favored above others. It's because we've learned the things that we need to do, the ordinances that we need to follow, and the things, particularly, this is what I want to camp on. We've learned what we should be avoiding that other people don't realize, for the most part, are actually poisoning them. This could be like the things that they cook on regularly, the chemicals that they have in their household, and the foods that they eat that are just conventional foods. They don't realize that all those things actually contain micro amounts, or maybe even significant amounts of things like microplastics and other chemicals that are actually inhibiting their energy and potentially their fertility, and could be causing a variety of other symptoms that could lead to chronic diseases. So we've been able to tackle those things and figure out more over time. That's just the nature of experience and learning and growing and having more children. And this is the opposite of what we hear from most people. It's pregnancies get harder and harder. Each time mom's body is much more nutritionally deficient, and because it's more depleted with each kid. If mom's not getting adequate minerals and calcium, the baby's body is made from minerals, right? Think about the rapidly growing skeletal structure of the child. What about omega-3s? If mom doesn't have a good supply of omega-3s in her diet, which the American diet, standard diet, is notoriously low in omega-3s, then the baby will steal them from her brain, which is what we get. The result is something that we call mommy brain, right? Where she literally can't think and connect a lot of dots. Postpartum depression is a nutritional deficiency. So all of these things that are just considered normal for most people, like low testosterone among men, and hormonal problems among women don't have to be. And I'm saying this as somebody who didn't know anything about this when I was in my early 20s and had chronic fatigue and had no prospects for a family. And because I learned what I needed to avoid, but in particular, I was given the tools that I needed to add into my diet, into my life, both through concentrated nutritional supplementation and then eating real food. By doing that, it transformed my life. And then when I met my wife, it transformed her life, and it's transformed our extended family as well. And then our children. I look at my children and I see in them, and I know conclusively that their genetic potential to live longer, to be healthier, to be stronger is much greater than mine because of the very things that were in my wife's body present when they were conceived and when they were in the womb, the things that we were intentional about, the things that we typically don't give them that are common for breakfast or for dinner in other families that we know will harm their health. So I hope this encourages you. And that's a little bit of what I've been talking to people with and that I alluded to in my short presentation at the Trad Dad conference. And what I wanted to highlight there is that this conference was about the importance of having more kids and how this is part of the American way. One of the speakers has written a book that I just finished called The American Way. It's by Alan Carlson. I highly recommend it. It has a lot to do with farming. And in fact, Mr. Carlson himself has been a farmer for years. And then Mr. Yenner from Boise State University also talked about many of the different factors going around building a healthy family. Now we can take those ideas and we can see what we need to do. I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Yenner. Maybe I'm pronouncing his name wrong. So if you hear this, Scott, I apologize. But I had some great conversations. And one of the things we talked about is what is causing the infertility crisis beyond the ideological issues, beyond feminism, beyond this climate alarmism. What are the things that are actually driving the infertility crisis? And what we landed on in that, one of the things that he landed on was microplastics and those hormone disruptors in our diet. And that's certainly a huge part of the puzzle. What I want to focus on in this episode as we wrap up is the nutritional component. And then we're going to dive more specifically into the things that you need to eliminate and detoxify, get those microplastics out of your life and then out of your body. And then what you need to add in to regenerate and then have good fertility. As much as we want to look at how we do this on the national political level, how does this happen physically? How do we put men and women, marriages and families in the position to have more children? Well, that is not a product of chance and simply of a desire. And it's not even a product of incentivization. There are many nations now, whether you look at Russia or some European nations and beyond, that are financially incentivizing their people to have more children. Meanwhile, in America, we haven't changed the amount of the child tax credit. That's not enough. When you look at the statistics of infertility in the United States, how big of a problem it is, a financial incentive doesn't solve the issue of being able to get pregnant. There are people who want to get pregnant and have children right now that are having issues. I talked to a gentleman this week who he and his wife have 2 children and they want to have more, and they have lost several children in the process of trying to get pregnant. I talked to multiple guys at all 3 conferences that we've been at this year. I had multiple gentlemen come up to me and tell me that their wives have had 4 or 5 miscarriages because they've dealt with it so many times. It just seems normal. And this is normative for so many people. But what's normal is not what is good. Dave Ramsey often says that normal or average is broke and in debt. We are financially in debt. We're also physically in debt. We're physically broken. We need to give families a greater degree of productivity, and that starts with our health. Now, I love the MAHA movement. In order to make Earth healthy again, it's not just about the United States, because the sad reality is that the United States has exported our destructive, terrible diet, and we try to export our crap, fake foods and genetically modified foods all over the world. Thankfully, most countries reject it. But we have exported so much garbage to the rest of the world. I've seen this firsthand living in other countries as a missionary and experiencing other cultures. And it just has broken my heart to see how we have done so much damage around the world. And this could be said on so many fronts. I'm just going to focus on the food front. We could talk about the military industrial complex and the vaccine industry, so many different things. But what about our impact on the rest of the world? Well, in order to make Earth healthy again, we have to start with making our own country healthy again, making America. And in order to make America great in God's sight, we have to have families that are healthy. So this is why I love the MAHA movement. Making America great again is inextricably linked with making America healthy again. I've dedicated my life to it for the last 15 years, since I went from being a person with chronic fatigue and had no hope of having a family or a job and not knowing what I could do with my future, but just giving it to the Lord, and then Him bringing the right nutritional tools across my path, which many of you have started implementing since you've been listening to the podcast and have connected with us. And I'm so grateful. All I wanted originally was to have a future, a physical future with reliable health, sustainable energy, and strong immunity. That very quest of mine to have energy again, that turned into the mission that God had for me to share with others. And as it just started to happen by osmosis and discipleship, and then now more broadly with coaching and working with other men. And as the Lord willed, he restored me and he's restoring many others to give us hope, not just spiritually, but also physically. And that's why there's a resurgence in interest in working out and physical fitness and losing weight, body composition, having people know that they can be regenerated on the physical level. And we want to take as we've talked about in our episode on food and regeneration, we want to take this spiritual reality of regeneration and turn that into a daily reality of being regenerate. And we see this physical reality in our body as it's constantly rebuilding and recreating itself at the cellular level. So you can recall back to our prologue of this season where we told the story of Elijah. God didn't let him black pill and commit suicide in his depressive state, in his fatigue, after running super fast, supernaturally fast probably. He fed Elijah food and he got him back in the fight. And this is just simply what a lot of you guys need, especially if you are fatigued at the end of the year going into the new year and you're thinking, oh, I have all these things I want to do. I want to do 75 hard, or maybe you're just thinking, I want to just start eating a little bit healthier. And it's not like food has gotten cheaper yet. We're still waiting for a lot of the changes that we're optimistic may come. But in the meantime, you need to have a plan. And God took Elijah in that state and he regenerated him. Since we've already covered food and regeneration and redemption in the first half of the season, I want to now address fertility directly. And before we give you the specific things that you need to eliminate, reduce, detox, and then consume in order to regenerate, to have physical fertility, that is, of course, what family planning really is and what it should be. The destruction of the child for convenience and harvesting is obviously not family planning. That's planning to destroy your family and planning to bring the wrath of God on your house and on your nation. But family planning would be preparing our bodies in order to reproduce. For men, this looks like making sure that you have enough zinc. For women, making sure that your hormones are in balance, that you're giving your body the essential healthy oils, which we talked about in our grain provision episode, so that you don't have things like PCOS, which put you at risk of not being able to conceive. For you fathers, this looks like making sure that your sons and daughters don't eat the normal trash and junk that's given to them at school or that's common among their friends, but that they consume foods that are making their bodies strong and healthy while they're still developing up to their mid-20s. It looks like making sure that your daughters have the right nutrients in order to make them a fruitful garden for their future husband. It looks like making sure that your sons aren't addicted to junk foods and energy drinks and other things that have ingredients in them that literally lower their sperm counts. For you mothers, this looks like prioritizing nutrient-dense foods and recipes and things that your children are going to get those nutrients from, and teaching your daughters how to do the same so that when they have their own families, they can keep this tradition going. And this is something that humans did for thousands of years. We passed on recipes, an understanding of how to cultivate the soil and our own bodies, medicinal, herbal remedies, things that were natural. We did this for thousands of years until we allowed in the West the complete takeover of our own personal physical health by these giant corporations, by these entities, including the state, to run roughshod over us and to destroy our bodies and make us dependent upon chemicals and things that are continuing to sterilize us. Not just doing your marital duty, hoping that you get pregnant and banking on everything to just happen by chance. I talked about what my wife and I did in order to put ourselves in this position. We didn't expect that it would happen so quickly, but the Lord blessed those efforts. And thankfully, we happen to have the best tools in the world to be able to do that and to speed up that process. So I can't take credit for that. All I can do is say that we knew what we should be doing, and we started doing it to the best of our knowledge at the time, and we've improved on that with each pregnancy. And Trevor has a passage for us to help us understand how we can have a regenerated worldview of fertility, looking at the anti-Gnostic practical application of theology, building our game plan for fertility on a regenerated, hopeful worldview.
Husbands are to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hates his own flesh, but provides and cares for it, just as Christ does for the church, since we are members of his body.
A healthy priest of the home provides fertility. He nourishes his wife as well as himself, more than himself, in fact. The husband cares for his wife's body as his own body, and he nourishes it. This is the direct statement of Paul, and he's talking about eating well, taking care of yourself. Of course, again, back then, they only had real food. In nourishing his wife as himself and sacrificing to make her healthy, he is acknowledging the reality that she is an abundant garden and the mother of life. Eve was the mother of all the living. That's what her name means. And it is true. Some people will balk against the statement, but women are biologically superior. Now, I don't mean by this that women are superior to men in their headship, in their authority, or physically. Physically, men are much stronger, more capable. Their fortitude and all these other aspects that give them the ability to lead, to take charge, and to dominate are obviously superior to women. But sexually speaking, with the biological nature of reproduction, women are superior to men. And God makes woman the glory of man for this reason. She's the crown of humanity. She's more beautiful than a man for this reason. A man is to desire his wife, and a man gives his wife his seed, and from that seed, she creates and nourishes a life. And it takes what takes him a moment to give, she receives, and over the course of 9 months, grows another human. So women are more complex emotionally and sexually than men for a reason. This could be as simple as saying, while men are physically stronger and superior, they can't breastfeed, they can't lactate and give babies nourishment. Only a woman can do that. They are designed to grow another human. This is why after a woman gives birth to a girl in the Old Testament law, she's considered unclean for a longer period of time. Being clean and unclean didn't have so much to do with the external things. It had to do with moving away from life. So after she gives birth to a girl, that baby girl that the wife gives birth to has eggs already inside of her body. And that is the potential for life. Since a greater potential for life has been removed from the woman's body than if she gave birth to a boy, she is unclean for a longer period of time. This is really deep acknowledgement of reality in Scripture. He gave woman to man, took woman from man, and added to her this ability that wasn't found in Adam himself in order to make the earth fruitful. She was to multiply and to bear him offspring that would fill and subdue the earth. So we understand that men and women are created differently. And on the physical level, women have trillions more cells than men do because, again, they are designed to create and nourish another human. Wives who have really struggled with pregnancies and are very fatigued, being able to see a turnaround to where they have energy and they're not sick all the time is something that plays a massive role in families. And if you've struggled with those things yourself, you know how draining it can be on your life at the time and on your wife. So we want to make sure that you have those tools. And that's something that you can get in touch with us right now. You can go to our website and you can look at the fertility page and you can book a call with me. And if you and your wife want to do a discovery call, I can bring my wife in alongside that. And we already have some recordings with our naturopathic pediatrician and other resources that can help you look at nourishing children and getting healthy that are available right now that we can send you after we do a discovery call. So now that we've addressed our helpmeets and their nourishment, what about the nourishment of our offspring? These wonderful gifts that our wives give to us, that the Lord gives to us, these arrows that are supposed to be thought of generationally rather than simply individually or temporally. What about their health?
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, so that it may go well with you, and that you may have long life in the land. Fathers, do not exasperate and stir up anger in your children. Instead, bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord.
Once God gives us a child, and we already talked about at the beginning how this is miraculous in general, but especially in the modern world where roughly a third of pregnancies end in miscarriage because of all the toxicants in our bodies and the lack of good nutrition. If we are blessed to bring a child into this world, how do we get them started and why should we get them the best start in life? A faithful man ensures that his children as well aren't being systematically poisoned and that they're not being given the least healthy options. They need to be given the best possible start in life. And if you haven't done that, if you didn't take great care to make sure that your wife was getting real quality nutrients while she was pregnant or your children in their early years, you can start doing that right now, no matter the age of your children. Even if they're teenagers, there's something that you can do about this. Even if they're young adults getting ready to have children of their own, You have to prioritize good nutrition above all. And this is taking me back to my original statement from my good friend Caleb Lang, that men are called to take dominion, to take ownership of the nutritional status of their family. Oftentimes I hear guys talk about nutrition in terms of investment. Well, it's just outside of our budget and it's not something that I can really invest in right now. Maybe we'll do it later on, as if it's just, another ETF in their portfolio that they may or may not get into, as if it's cryptocurrency or maybe buying a piece of property. It's just one of many different investments. Good nutrition shouldn't be looked at as an investment. It should be looked at as a necessity, because it is. And good nutrition is the foundation of the energy and the longevity that all of these other investments are going towards. Why do you have money saved up in the bank? For the future. Well, you don't have a future if you don't feed and nourish your body well. We put more care and thought into purchasing a vehicle, oftentimes, especially as guys, than we do the vehicle that God has given us to live life, which is our bodies. So we must make this a high priority alongside the admonition of the Lord when it comes to raising our children. Paul says to raise your children in the nurture. Here's our word, clearly an allusion to the physical reality of taking care of our bodies, to raise our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. This is not a spiritual term only, it's a physical one. A father's first duty is to feed his children. Christ talks about a good father not giving their children serpents or rocks, but giving them bread and fish.
Who among you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or, if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him?
Are you giving your children poisonous foods? Things like Kellogg's, which literally have rocks in them as the minerals, which destroy your health. They don't have food-based nutrients. They have cottonseed oil in them as the supposed vitamins. What kind of a father are you when you're feeding your children? Are you unwittingly feeding them snake oil in the form of processed foods, sugar, and pharmaceuticals? God forbid. Are your children dependent upon drugs to govern their mind? Do you feed them breakfast cereals and many other types of junk food that you just let them have as often as they want? Father, consider this area the greatest investment in God's kingdom that we can start making right now, because it's not a choice of having no food or healthy food. It's a choice of which food you're going to buy. You're going to be eating. So what kinds of things are you going to be eating? And we're here to coach you and help you start making better decisions along those lines. An investment in God's kingdom starts with having a healthy family, nourished and protected. And odds are, gentlemen, because I've coached for 15 years and have talked to many, many families, that your wife is the one that is the nutritional leader of the home. She's the one taking responsibility and taking ownership of the nutritional status of the home. And that is your job. It's not to say that you don't work together and you don't delegate her authority. My wife does the cooking in our home, but I give her the tools that she needs in order to do that. For Christmas this year, I bought her an electric stone mill, which she's wanted for several years. And this is giving her the ability to grind our grain fresh, which is what I've talked about on previous episodes, instead of having to outsource that to somebody else. So this is how we as men can take ownership of the nutritional status of our home, and therefore the health and the energy of our home, therefore the ability of our home to be productive. To bring this home a little bit more, we need to understand that our children will emulate our behaviors, not merely our commands. And this includes our eating behaviors, our physical fitness behaviors. Your discipline matters to your sons and daughters. If you are proactively healthy, you have the energy and the wisdom to lead your family in worship and on your family mission, which your family needs to have a dedicated mission. What are the dragons of our time that your family, God has destined to destroy and to attack? What are the strongholds that you're tearing down? It's not going to be the same for all of us, for every single family. It's not even going to be the same for all the families within a church. What are the multi-generational tasks that God has equipped your family to take on? And will you have a growing family? If you do well in the arena of good nutrition and nourishing your family and take ownership of the health of your family, then you will have a growing family. And that doesn't just mean the size of your family, although that is certainly one component. This also means the strength and the rejuvenation of your family, the immunity of your family, and the impact of your family. That's really what fertility is in the long game. Fertility is not merely how many kids can I have right now and how can I get pregnant. It's how can I create a family legacy and a healthy family that lives long in the land. To bring this full circle to the Maha movement that's storming our country right now, at Be Regenerated, it's our mission to make sure that you have these blessings on your home as the regenerated people so that you can be a blessing to others and that we can lead our country into a correct view of fertility. And this starts with having the right worldview and also the right fraternity of other men pursuing the same mission, tracking these daily macros and taking action and not just hearing the word, but also doing it. To this end, as you know, we have the Regenerated Brotherhood. We have added so many new things to the Brotherhood, including some incredible discounts, and we're partnering with some other amazing companies like Armored Republic, who we've now created a standard program to make sure that the average man can also meet the average Army combat fitness test, making them a more fit provider and protector for their family. And we have coaching resources if you're specifically focused on weight loss, in order to live longer and be healthier for your family, to maybe look better for your wife. We have some body composition, muscles, and metabolism courses within the Brotherhood, as well as healthy, beyond organic shopping, God's Farmacy, and more that are going to help you. The first thing that you do when you enter the Brotherhood is fill out a 2-page audit of your health, of your life. It's called the Regeneration Blueprint, and you can send that to me, and I will go over it with you if you're a member of the Brotherhood and help you know what you can start with today. You can take the next 90 days and completely transform your family, become more fertile and more productive, and we're excited to help you do that with Be Regenerated. You also get exclusive discounts to a variety of companies, not just to Armored Republic. We're talking Biltong, whole food supplements, electrolytes, other things that you will enjoy as a man and that your family will benefit from. We're so blessed right now that the president-elect is talking about the best years being ahead, and they truly can be. They can be for your family, not just for the nation as a whole. If we are revived and we are regenerated and the Lord shows his mercy to us as he has, then we can truly see great times for our children and our children's children. Check the link in the description to join the Brotherhood, and we would be happy to help you make this mission personal in your life, making America healthy again, by making you strong and healthy again and making families fertile again.
How happy is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. You will surely eat what your hands have worked for. You will be happy, and it will go well for you. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like young olive trees around your table. In this very way, the man who fears the Lord will be blessed. May the Lord bless you from Zion, so that you will see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life, and will see your children's children. Peace be with Israel.
In closing, thank you so much to all of you who have subscribed to our Substack, both for free and those of you who are paid members. It means a lot to us that you want to support our work, and this takes hours to put together and to produce. We do it with care and love because we want to be a blessing to you and your family. So if you want to support our work, the simplest way that you can do that is go to our Substack and subscribe either as a monthly or an annual member. You'll get a couple months free as an annual member. You'll unlock our bonus episodes, including a bonus episode that I'm going to have on this very fertility episode. We'll do one for each main episode. We'll have a bonus content just for subscribers. And we have plenty of other articles coming out, and we're starting to record audio over those articles from the different authors of the articles to make the reading and listening experience really easy for you if you subscribe and you are inside the Substack app, which most of you are. Our next main episode is going to be the meat provision, following our series on the different food groups. We already did, as you know, fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and we're going to be covering the meat provision. We're really excited about that, and breaking down an understanding of protein and amino acids is something that I basically have a conversation with people about almost every day, and I'm excited to have a podcast for you to digest that. Then we're going to have a fertility part 2, followed by an episode on how to start getting healthy. What are the basic steps you can start taking right now in the modern world to keep it simple and keep it safe? Listening to this podcast, I hope, has been a blessing to you and your family and has given you good ideas. If you want more specific ideas, get in touch with us. Follow us on Substack, or you can reach out to us one-on-one. We would be happy to help you. For more resources on fertility, you can check out beregenerated.com/fertility or click the link in the description in order to book a discovery call and download some articles, get other tools for your family to start regenerating today. The future is bright. Let's be regenerated together.
And that wraps up today's episode of Be Regenerated. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date, don't forget to join our Wisdom Weekly email through our podcast page. Also, your support means the world to us, so if you have a moment, please hit the stars on your listening platform. It really helps us reach more people who can benefit from these discussions. And if you're interested in joining a community of like-minded men striving for holistic health and strength, check out the Be Regenerated Brotherhood at beregenerated.com/brotherhood. It's an exciting platform designed to challenge and support you in your fitness, nutrition, and spiritual disciplines. We also appreciate your support through our partnership with Neolife for top-notch supplements. You can find all the links and details in the show notes. God bless, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. So, whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do all to the glory of God.